Give me a comic book press release. Make your press releases into comics. It will do better.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Media Coffee, a podcast brought to you by PR Newswire, a Cision brand. I'm excited to be joined today by someone who wears many creative hats, Yazan al-Saadi. He is a writer, a researcher, a critic, and also a comic. He currently works as the international desk editor for The New Arab in Lebanon, but he has also worked with media outlets across the Middle East region. In today's episode, we will discuss media in the region, how to best communicate with journalists, and more. So settle in and grab your coffee. Yes, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. You're probably the second journalist that I interview from the region. I had an interview previously with someone from Bahrain, but I always find it interesting to speak to different journalists across in different countries, just to get a better understanding of their experiences, and probably help our client as well understand the region in general. So if we can start by you introducing yourself to our audience, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I hope to have an interesting conversation with you and for the audience. So I am Yazan al-Saadi. I am Syrian with a Canadian passport. I was born in Kuwait. I've lived across three continents throughout my life, uh, and I started journalism in 2009. I accidentally got into it when I was back in Kuwait after my master's, and my friend was an editor in an English newspaper, Al Watan Daily at the time, and hired me as an editor and journalist, and I got stuck ever since. With that, I worked with a newspaper, an English department of an Arabic newspaper in Lebanon, did freelance journalism, worked for about 4 years in Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, as in communications, which is shows me the other side from engaging with journalists. And now I am a writer and editor with the New Arab, which is based in London, while I'm in Beirut. That's a very brief, quick summary, but we can go into detail and see what works best for the audience and yourself.
It's great that you've mentioned you also have experience within the other side, because I think that's something we can explore in a bit. But my first question is probably a question that you and many other journalists hear in a regular basis, and it's about press releases. Are they still important? Do journalists still look forward to receiving press releases?
Yeah, the short answer is sure. Yeah, they're still important. People still use them and rely on them. Even though it gets lost in the mess, there are problems with press releases, right? When a journalist gets email after email of press releases that sound the same, they might, forget or ignore it or not use it. So there is that problem. But press releases are a tried and true way of constantly being in communication with different agencies. So it's not something you should forego. I just recommend trying to rethink the style and creativity of press releases, perhaps, just to embrace new ways of expression and technology, especially when you're trying to, highlight your brand or some kind of message or campaign. It's all about trying to think of how can I reach people, and I think yeah, with press releases it's classical, but it needs a new renovation, let's say.
Yeah. So we at Cision we do this report in a yearly basis called the State of the Media Report, and we always get the similar answers that press releases are important. But again, there is this debate, as you mentioned, between communication professionals and journalists about issues related to the press releases. And this conversation, I've worked in PR about 10 years ago, and to this day we're having this exact same conversation about press releases. But I'm interested to know within journalists themselves, what kind of conversation do you guys have about press releases? Because I know in a way it could be a personal preference of some journalists to not wanting to receive press
Yeah.
releases, but then at the same time, obviously, where do you source your information from? So I'm really interested to know what kind of conversation you have within the journalism world.
I mean, the conversation is still on a superficial level, right? It's based on how we're engaging with this material that's coming to us. So, from a very basic level, the conversation is about how useful these press releases are, what we can use, the quotes or the foundational information we can use to build a bigger story. So they have their utilities there. At the same time, if it's a bad press release or badly written or worded, as the audience in the media, we will notice, and we will comment about it. So it should remind people that work on press releases to always try and have a high standard or do a good job or make it engaging. Um, and if, like examples I can think of, at least with my experiences, is the awkwardness when it comes to translating press releases into Arabic rather than writing it in Arabic first. That creates very awkward sentences or bad usage of word that kind of brings down the message or product that you are trying to sell. So there are those reactions that happen with press releases, but all in all, press releases are a component, a routine component. It's like checking your mail. You know what I mean? That's what press releases are. But we have to be careful because there is a diminishing returns with them, right? In the end, like checking your mail, press releases can end up in spam folders. So that's where I'm saying it's a delicate balance where you're trying to reach audiences and engage them without putting them off, whoever they may be, whether they're media agencies or just a normal person.
Just going back again to the translation part, because that's
Yeah.
actually a huge, I guess, like a really important question, and something that needs probably a bit of discussion. Translating press releases to Arabic. Obviously, there is, lots of companies abroad that are interested in the region, and they don't necessarily have like an Arabic section or someone who speaks Arabic within the team. So, what would you advise these companies to do, like in terms of the awkwardness? Because I know sometimes with some translation, the Arabic sentences get really awkward and lost in translation. So, what would you advise them to do? What's the best way to go around it to be able to, yeah, communicate better?
I don't think you can go around it in the sense of you need an Arabic speaker. So you need to work with that. I mean, you could say, oh, I'll use ChatGPT, but it's not the same. People are going to tell. And I would advise and recommend companies to consider when they're working in different regions with different languages to try and market themselves in that language first. That would be quite an interesting exercise because maybe you have an edge in terms of the contexts, connotations, and authenticities that will hit for the audiences when you're speaking to them in their language rather than translating from, I don't know, English to Arabic or Chinese to English. Like there's always going to be something lost there. So I don't think you can get around it. I think rather, why get around it? Meet it head on and play with it, engage with it. It is very useful for your entity and company to engage with different languages if you want to grow in this multipolar world, I think. So that's my advice. I mean, you need more Arabic speakers and try to embrace Arabic speakers first and play around with your context more on an equal footing, I think,
Yeah.
is my advice.
Yeah, let me play the devil advocate, right?
Mm.
They did their work. They hired a translation agency within the region or the countries that they're targeting, but then the translation still comes out a bit awkward. What do you think should they like? What's the next step for them? How to rectify such a situation?
I mean, how would they know it comes awkward? They would need someone that knows how to speak Arabic, right? So they would know how it's awkward.
Probably, probably, let's say a feedback from readers.
Yeah, okay. So that's why I think don't use the translation agency. What I'm trying to say is you in your communications team should have someone that speaks the language of the markets and places you're going to engage with. So you need that diversity in your team. You can't just go through a translation. That's what I'm saying. Don't do that. Actually expand your team and it will be helpful. You'll have new ideas, a sort of imagination to your advertising, your messaging, your campaign that I think is quite lucrative and profitable in so many ways. So yeah, I think your first mistake perhaps is going to a translation agency. you know, in your example as a devil's advocate, I would be like, why? Hire an Arabic speaker in your team. There is a long utility. This person will be working on different projects. If you try to expand in the region, if their Arabic is really good, even better, and they would lead certain marketing campaigns or have fun. It's much better for you, I think, as whatever you are, an entity, a business, a campaign, an NGO, whatever.
Lots of people obviously talk about AI at the moment,
Yeah,
and some people might use AI to translate press releases or even to write the press release itself. Did you come
yeah.
across any similar press releases written by AI? What was your reaction?
Definitely, and you can tell when something is written by AI. So I don't think that's a good thing if you can tell. I mean, I would encourage people to work with tools like AI. It's a new technology. We need to understand it and use it responsibly. And it's why not? But that's the point, to use it strategically, intelligently, and responsibly. So, working with it to help you craft your press release is the idea, but don't over rely it. Like, think of it's autocorrect. It's like over relying on autocorrect to write a novel. That's ridiculous. So think of it that way. It's useful to help you and guide you, but don't over rely on it, I would say. And people will tell. An audience, this is what's amazing. I mean, okay, sure, sometimes AI is getting so powerful that you can't, but there is always some way. Someone can always tell, and that is important. It signifies the potency of the human touch in anything we craft, you know?
Just going a bit back to your background. Obviously, you're currently working in Lebanon. If you worked in Kuwait and with other media outlets in a few other countries. So I'm interested to know about if you can discuss like or talk about the media landscape. If you want to focus on Lebanon or talk about it, or the difference between, for example, media landscape in Lebanon versus Kuwait, or talk about them in general. That would be great insight for our audience.
I think the media, so it's the media landscape is quite uh, various and huge a topic in the Middle East entirely. In general, Kuwait and Lebanon have more freedom of expression compared to other places, and that is just related to history, politics, etc. But in general, a lot of media agencies are moving online. They're embracing new technology. The newspaper still exists. The radio still exists. So never forget those. But more and more people are using smartphones and new tech, social media to do outreach on TikTok and Instagram and all these places. So there has to be some sort of balance, especially when you're trying to reach your audience from different levels. In terms of the media landscape as well, it's very diverse. So I don't think it's difficult really to reach them with press releases. That is very doable. Just and I think for any businesses, I would say just have someone do a day or two of research, and you can hit the big newspapers. Whether in Egypt or in Dubai or in Beirut. When you think about this, and if you want to target local media, so you do newspapers, television, and radio. That's how you break it down in each place, or online, of course, if you want to be transnational. Um, but the media landscape in the region is quite vibrant. It's more vibrant than people expect. There's a lot of potentiality, a lot of thirst, a lot of interesting things happening. So I would really suggest that any businesses do take it seriously, do the work, do the research. Don't just uh, uh, do half measures or take the context lightly, because when you take it seriously, you will succeed very well in reaching and connecting with every agency. You'll be trusted. They'll be more meaningful to you. They'll engage with you, and they'll highlight your work. So I think those are generalities, but we can go into so much more, to unpack about the media landscape in our region. It's because we're talking about a region that is from, Morocco to the borders of Iran. We're talking about 400 million people with different languages and dialects and history and culture. It's very interesting, but there's a lot. I feel that's the thing that I think the message, if I want to simplify it, is there's so much potential. And I think that's what's powerful about it. It's not a well-worn territory. You can be very creative and do things that are wonderful in our outlets.
Do you think one press release will do, like one version of a press release will do to distribute across all of these regions, let's say Gulf Lebanon or Gulf Levant region and North Africa? Or do you think companies should actually spend time and effort to basically work on minor changes to target these regions?
I think ideally it depends on resources, right? Like if you have the resources, then definitely it doesn't hurt to craft your press releases and twist it to the different dialects or local contexts. I think the audiences will appreciate that so much more. Like there's something joyful about listening to something in your dialect, right? I think we all have that. But at the same time, I also, you have to be practical, right? Like, uh, and the thing that's interesting in our region is you can speak to everyone in a singular language, which is modern standard Arabic, which is media Arabic, right? It's a modern version of Fusha that people throughout the different regions in our major region can understand most of, whether in Libya or in Sudan or in Egypt or in Iraq, Bahrain, and so on. But if you have the resources to do it, then yeah, I would totally be like, yeah, of course, have fun, do different dialects. But if you can't, then yeah, go back to the very simple form or the basic form of modern standard Arabic. Don't do Fusha because Fusha is really classical and dry. It's for English speaking audiences, it's like using Shakespearean English, which why would you want to do that in your press release? Imagine doing an English press release in Shakespearean English. Kind of fun, but it would lose your audience very well, unless they're a literature major. Um, and I think as well, don't be afraid to be creative in the Arabic. Like one thing that languages do have is a sort of durability and elasticity. We can try and push the boundaries of certain words in Arabic that may not exist, or combine them or twist them. I think those are things that are worth doing because Arabic is a very potent living language, like any language, right? Like English, like Spanish. So there's a lot that can be done there, and there's a lot that are creative and useful for everyone. I think.
Then what do you think companies should keep in mind while they're writing press releases?
Who's your audience? That's such a very simple, basic thing. Who's your audience always? Like, who is your audience? If the basic answer is everyone, okay. Sometimes I know there are two philosophies. When someone says I'm writing for everyone, one philosophy says then you're writing for no one because you're writing for everyone. But the other one is that if you're writing for everyone, then try to talk as if you're going to talk to everyone. So how would you do that? Again, think who's your audience? What languages are you going to use? What's the style? How simple or how complicated are your phrasings? Is there a joke that is universal or not? There's so many layers you can do, but know your audience. Who is your audience?
And then, just in terms of where do you source your information or news from? Obviously, there is this aspect of press releases, but what other platforms or resources that you use to get news?
I mean, in this day and age, you try to use whatever you can get. So I use typical traditional news media websites throughout the world, wires, press releases, social media posts, WhatsApp forwards, whatever, like whatever information I can get. There's always concerns about disinformation or misinformation. So when you see something, by seeing from multiple sources and cross checking, you can sort of gauge more or less what's going on more, you know what I mean, rather than one source. So I try to keep it various in both English and Arabic. Even in different languages, I Google Translate just to see if I can read or understand. I think that's it, really. Just try to diversify your sources.
Thank you. And then, in terms of communicating with journalists directly, how do you prefer to be contacted by companies or PR
As a human
professionals
being,
as a
as
human
a,
being?
as a human being, I think we need to. That's very simple. Treat me as a person. I think
Hmm.
that would be nice. You would be surprised how much being nice can get you far in a business engagement. Like everyone forgets etiquette, I think is something that is important. Just be a sincere, good human being, and that way you'll get so much more. I think in a relationship you're trying to build between, journalist or client and journalist. Try to, have a repertoire. I know, like, from my, that's why think about this as when I was not a journalist, I was working on the communication side. You try to build your relationship with the people you're communicating with, the journalists, get to know them, like, know them as people, as far as, comfortable, not, you know what I mean? But yeah, just don't forget there are human beings behind everything.
And then is WhatsApp used, for example, because I've had conversation with few journalists in a few countries where they mentioned contacting journalists by WhatsApp after building or creating some sort of connection
Mm,
is completely acceptable. While in other regions they prefer the more traditional side, phone or an email. So what
yeah.
about journalists in Lebanon or within the region
I
in
mean,
general?
usually in the journalists, yeah, you contact them via WhatsApp. Like, they tend to build from there. They're very approachable most of the time, I think. Definitely, if you do an email, it could get lost, but WhatsApp, it tends to be massively used. And WhatsApp also, you do these blasts or channels that are this constant sort of engaging updates that can work for press releases as well, or just news for anyone. Um, Definitely, I think that's a very keen way. Less and less people call each other, which I think is very funny. Uh, I still advocate calling people because I think there's something about hearing voices, human voices in a conversation that is interesting and more meaningful in an engagement rather than looking just at texts. Don't send voice notes because people apparently just don't like that. I don't mind it, but a lot of people don't. So I would say try calling first. Actually, my tactic would be call first, and then if they don't answer because they don't know who the hell is calling them on the number, then start with a text over WhatsApp or some email or something, and build from there. But always remember, be a human being.
That's actually really interesting that you've mentioned calling and you're advocating for calling because it's something that journalists tend to tell me that they don't want to have just because they're super busy. And obviously it's understandable, tight deadlines, small
Oh
teams, all
yeah,
of that. But there is also that human aspect of building a connection with someone that could take you a long way, as you mentioned.
and it's like by doing a call. I know, I get it. Journalists are busy, but you can take a moment for a call because sometimes maybe the situation can be dealt with within a minute. With a simple exchange of information, and halas, everything's done. Everyone can go continue their work. I think by calling, it's important to see if you can deal with something immediately. I think there's that aspect to it. If not, then yeah, you go back to the traditional way of taking your time. But I would advocate, even if they're busy, they'll tell you, right? Like if they literally have a deadline in 5 minutes, they'll say, "Hey, I have a deadline in 5 minutes. I'll call you back," or something. You know what I mean? But don't be shy. I think it's worth calling people regardless.
Then just one last question before we end. Obviously, we've discussed the translation issue. We've discussed few things within the region, how PR professionals basically communicate. But I'm wondering, is there like any other issues that you've noticed with companies communicating within the region that's worth highlighting and that should companies should pay attention to?
I mean, be careful with typical tropes, stereotypes, racism, these things that are still lingering. You can't ignore it. I would really highlight, be careful about that. Uh, that still happens, unfortunately. The other challenges as well is don't be afraid of the audience. Like I think there's nothing to be afraid of. It's not like, the masses here are ununderstandable or like some kind of confounding labyrinth. They're human beings like any other community. Just be basic, approach it very basically, and you'll see what happens.
Any last recommendation you would like to share?
Just keep writing, guys. And like I said, I hope for more interesting press releases. Be creative. Give me a comic book press release. Make your press releases into comics. It will do better.
That's interesting. Yeah, sorry, we didn't really explore your comic side. So, is there
Yeah,
something
yeah.
you want to share about it?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think comics are a great tool for information. So if I'm going to give one last advice to people, consider making your press release to comics. A lot of fun. It's an investment, sure. It costs money for an artist and a writer to work on this, but it would do really well as a social media thing, as affecting your audience and imprinting the information in a very solid way. Yeah, so consider comics. Why not?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Yazan. I really appreciate your time and all the insights that you've given us. And yeah, just to thank our audience as well for watching. And just a reminder, follow us on social media. We across our platform on YouTube and LinkedIn as well, in addition to X. Send us any questions you have as well.